My name is Jack Mark. I'm a marketing brand manager here at Horizon Hobby, and I've got Mike McConville with me here to talk about the new E-flite Sukhoi Su-29MM Gen 2. So for folks that are familiar with the Sukhoi Su-29MM from Park Zone, which is another Horizon Hobby brand, this is effectively the same airframe, obviously with some new livery on it. And in fact, I was talking to one of our designers the other day. We think you picked a really awesome shade of blue. This really pops. I really like it. I think it looks really cool. But there are some important differences, obviously, besides the color between this and the Park Zone Su-29MM. So starting with the receiver, there were some things that have been changed that are pretty significant. So why don't you talk through a little bit of that?
Yeah, that's really the magic and the difference in the airplane, other than the cool new blue. The receiver is now it's an AR-636 receiver. It's more like the open stock. I don't know if people remember the original Sukhoi. A lot of the feedback was they loved the airplane and the way it flew, but that receiver was not reprogrammable. So we had built-in flight modes, and we had experimented with some safe features. We had a mode called Stagility, and it had a panic button, and it required a lot of transmitter setup. And if people didn't like the setup that was in there, they really had no option because they couldn't reprogram it. That was the feedback, was we want to be able to configure this airplane the way we want it. Sure. I get that. Everybody's different, right? Everybody's flying tastes and flying styles are different. So this one, completely different. We've taken the old airplane, put a new colors on it, and then we've taken the receiver and kind of gone back to the way we used to do things a little bit and kind of gone forward a little bit. And what I mean by that is it now has Safe Select. So with Safe Select, you can have safe or not have safe, and the safe feature you can have is just panic. Okay. So if you want to turn Safe Select on, and it's done by the way you bind the airplane, there's nothing else to do, no programming setup required in the receiver.
So I actually just want to elaborate on that really quickly, because we've done a couple of Safe Select airplanes. So the Timber, E-flite Timber that we have has Safe Select. That was I think the Spitfire was actually the first one, which is the other one, 1.2 meter Spitfire. Both of those have envelope limits with Safe on. They have envelope limits and automatic self-leveling. Yes. And you're saying this is a little bit different? This is a little bit different. This only has panic. So if you turn Safe Select on, and the reason for that is it's a Sukhoi, it's a 3D model. Sure, it's kind of almost an oxymoron to have a self-leveling, Sukhoi that flies with like a trainer. Or whatever. Yeah, sure. But the real value in what we did even in the first Sukhoi was with the panic is it gives you the opportunity to try 3D stuff to where if you're not real experienced, and you get messed up and you're not sure which way to go, just hit the panic button and the airplane levels itself. And other than that, it's flying in AS3X mode all the time. So that's one. So that's the only part of the Safe Select. If you bind it with Safe Select turned off, which is this the normal binding process, you just leave the bind button or the bind plug in until it's bound, then that's disabled and you don't even have to worry about it. It's not there as far as you're concerned, and you're just flying with AS3X. Now the other big difference with this one versus the old one is the AS3X has one set of gains that are set such that it's enough gain to really stabilize the airplane and make it fly really solid in wind and aid in 3D, but there's no high gain setting to where it oscillates in forward flight. Cool. Some pilots like that, so you go to that high gain, you only use it for slow 3D stuff, but you got to flip out of that mode or it oscillates. But the cool thing now is it's a completely reprogrammable receiver. So if you want that, like I do, I like to have a high gain setting, for hovering, makes it easier and stuff. You just plug in the iOS app or the Android app or the PC app, like you would any other 636 receiver that's open stock, and you can change the gains and stick priorities any way you want. Awesome. So you can completely tailor it to what you want. And another feature that's also that's different, and that's when I kind of referred to going back the way we used to do things a little bit, because we learn from things. We try new things, we think it's a good idea, sometimes it's not. Customers don't like it. One of the things we had started to do was program in dual rates into the receiver, so you didn't have to do it in the transmitter. So one flight mode you had low rate, another flight mode you had high rate. Well, it was kind of confusing because it's just a change of paradigm. People weren't used to doing things that way. So we thought, you know what? Customers aren't liking it, I'm not liking it, let's pull that out. So now, when you set up the airplane, you do it just the way you do any other airplane you're used to. You set the dual rates and expos in the transmitter.
There are recommendations in the manual. Set it for this. This is a good starting point. If you don't like it, change it and tailor it to your own liking. So really, the only thing you ever have to plug into the receiver to do is, if you want to, is change the gains. If you want higher gains, or if you want to turn AS3X off, you can go in and I wouldn't, because the airplanes,
sure,
I promise you, they fly better with AS3X on. But certainly something you can experiment with in a few seconds by plugging in and turning it off in the app.
So just to kind of, in a nutshell, that means that for the guy who is, really likes the way he does things, he has a routine, and and routines, especially for pilots, routines are everything.
Absolutely.
So for a guy that has a really established routine that he doesn't really want to change, if he wants this to be like every other bind and fly aircraft he's ever bought from us, he does nothing.
Exactly.
Right? Binds as usual. Dual rates go in as usual, and then if he wants to turn off AS3X, he can go in there and do that with either the USB cable or the audio interface if he wants to use his phone.
Exactly.
His iOS or Android device. So, okay, so then so that's the guy that, let's say you got somebody that maybe wants to push the experimental edge of things a little bit more, right? Or wants the benefits of Safe Select, basically. So they go through a slightly different bind process, right? So why don't you walk us through what that looks like?
So you want to walk through both of them?
Let's just do the one, because the traditional bind process, I think most of our customers are pretty familiar with. So let's just do the one that's a little bit different.
So the one that's a little bit different, which is the one you use to turn Safe Select on. I've already got the bind plug in, and the battery plugged in, so I turned on the receiver, and you can see it's in bind mode. It's flashing. So what I do before I turn the transmitter on to bind it, then I remove the bind plug. Then I turn on the transmitter in bind mode and bind it.
Binding. DSMX 11 milliseconds. Telemetry.
So now it's bound.
Bind complete.
And when I bind it that way, and the key difference is pulling the bind plug out before I turn on the transmitter in bind mode, it now it's bound with Safe Select turned on. So Safe Select will be on until I rebind it in a different way. And you also note when it booted up, the surfaces moved 2 times, and that's there to tell you that you are bound with Safe Select turned on.
The same thing we've done on the Sukhoi,
exactly,
on the Spitfire and the Timber as well.
So now I can turn it off. I've flown my flight. Now my next flight, I turn it on, and it has to initialize, and when it initializes, Safe Select is still turned on. See? It will stay turned on.
So you don't even have to remember, because it'll tell you.
It'll tell you.
It turns on.
It reminds you, hey, it's on.
That's cool.
So say I've flown it and I don't want the panic button anymore, then I can bind it in the normal way. And by normal way, it's really the way people are used to doing, where you put the bind plug in, turn it on, you leave the bind plug in,
right,
and you bind it.
Process.
Kind of the standard binding process. When I do that, now it's bound.
Bind complete.
And when it initializes, it'll only cycle once. See? That tells me I'm just AS3X, Safe Select is turned off. Awesome. Now I take the bind plug out, and it stays that way until if I ever decide I want Safe on again, then I can bind it in the other method.
So real quick, just to make sure, if you bind it with Safe Select on, because I know from having set up a Spitfire, it's kind of nice to know, well, when I get up there, I want to know that it's going to work. So there's bench testing, ways that you can kind of test it before you take it up.
So and one other thing I should mention is, say you do want Safe Select, you want the that safety net of a panic button as you're kind of learning some 3D stuff. There is a little bit of additional transmitter programming to do, but it's very simple. All you need to do is in the setup screen, you have to assign aux1, because that's the channel that triggers panic, to a button. So in this, to the momentary button. So in this radio, the DX9, I just go into channel assign and assign it to I, which is the button, and that's it. You actually don't have to. In our previous safe systems, you then had to go in and reverse aux1 to make it work. Now you don't with this one.
Just to switch
with this model, just assign it to the button, and that's it.
Which on the 9, you go to switch assignments and you push the button, right?
Yeah, and that's it, and it's done.
So you don't have to scroll through.
And you're finished. And then the cool thing too is say you don't want Safe Select anymore, well, just bind the receiver. You don't have to go change anything in the transmitter, because that channel is not used for anything, so it doesn't care. So you asked about a check to make sure it's working. So we'll bind it back in Safe Select mode, since I'd turned it off.
Binding. DSMX 11 milliseconds. Telemetry. Bind complete.
So it cycles twice, tells me that safe select is active. And so the real quick simple check is take the airplane and just turn it, a little bit off of level, right? And then press the panic button, and you'll get an input.
Sure.
Because it's saying I want to level the airplane. So as you rotate the airplane to level, the surfaces go to neutral. And that's it. That way you know you're in safe select. Now it's still like all of our other AS3X equipped airplanes. AS3X is off right now when you first, and it what powers it up or turns it on is just the first time you move the throttle, it turns AS3X on. So now everything is active in a rate gyro kind of configuration.
And
it stays on. It's not now with the power off. It stays on until I turn the switch off and fly again.
Gotcha. So that's actually an important note that one of our customers actually on a forum pointed out. So the differences between SAFE and AS3X. If you jiggle an airplane with AS3X, the surfaces will move and then come back.
Right.
Whereas with SAFE, whether panic recovery is on or you're in an envelope limiting mode, the control surfaces will stay deflected.
They stay deflected until it comes back. Yeah.
That's a cool way to kind of tell the difference between AS3X and sort of panic recovery or envelope limits.
Absolutely, and they serve totally different functions. That's why with AS3X they move, and when you stop moving, they neutralize. That's so it can counter effects of wind and make it's called a damping system. So it resists movement. But you want the airplane to stay where you put it.
Sure.
Especially with an aerobatic airplane, you can't be fighting it and have it rolling back to level. It just makes it fly. It just makes it stay wherever you put it. Really, like a really pure flying airplane. Where a safe system, it stays. The control surfaces stay moved until it's level, because that's a stabilizing system. That comes back. That's a leveling system. It's always seeking level flight because of the technology that's in the receiver and the sensors. It knows when it's level, it knows when it's not, and it forces itself.
Cool.
Two totally different features for totally different purposes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned that it flies like a pure flying airplane. So which reminds me of kind of a conversation that you had with Skip Stewart in the Skip Stewart video, actually, where he asked a question about the T-strip on the I think it was the P3, the hangar on the P3. And he said, well, does it make a big difference? She said, well, no, not really. The flight experience of an airplane, a good flying airplane, isn't necessarily the result of one major thing. It's the sum of a bunch of little things. Of
many little things that add up to make an airplane better and better and better. And pretty soon when you do 10 of those things, you go from something that would have flown to something that flies extremely well.
Well, if I had to pick an example, this is a really good example of that, I think, if I had to pick one, because of all the little things. So there's some obvious things with the vortex generators, but what besides that have you done to kind of to inject a little bit of that into the...
Many things, and what I've done on the Sukhoi that I try to do on all of the aerobatic stuff that I've designed over my whole career is the real challenge is preserving all the styling cues so it looks like the real airplane, but changing it a lot. So if you really get down and start comparing, if you were looking at it, on a drawing board, it would be very different, but you really can't see. They're not readily obvious. With something like this Sukhoi, I've done a lot of things to make it more pure with rudder. The stab location has changed, which makes a big difference. The size of the fin and the tail are different. Actually, the outline of the wing is different, adds a little more area, which lets you lower wing loading. As with any airplane, aerobatic or not, low wing loading is usually where you want to be. So there's some structural things in this that are actually really key to lower the wing loading, which means lower the weight. The wing is hollow. It's not a solid injection molded foam wing. It's actually injection molded in two pieces. So there's open cavities inside, basically like ribs inside it. Really not that different from a Carbon Z construction. It's pretty much the same kind of wing construction, which makes it stiffer yet lighter, so it results in a better flying airplane. Some things that are really kind of trick on this, I've added vortex generators to the top and bottom.
Okay.
And it's important top and bottom on an aerobatic airplane because you're going to be flying upside down as well as upright. And what they're doing is they keep they keep the wing flying at a lower speed. So for something it's a 3D airplane where you're flying a lot of high alpha, one of the problems with high alpha is you'll get wing rock a lot of times. Guys don't, no one likes that, and that's because the wing is just is stalling and air is stalling and reattaching constantly. Things with vortex generators, the size and the placement make a big difference in changing that. So you get them in the right place, and it doesn't happen. It minimizes that. The wing stays flying even at a high angle of attack better. Putting them top and bottom in the same place is important because flying 3D, you'll do it upright as much as you'll do it inverted. So that makes it a much more friendly airplane in the near stall or post stall flying. Other things I've done is like the rudder has a T-strip on the trailing edge. You can see it's not just it doesn't come to a point or a flat surface, but it actually has this flared trailing edge. Something I've done on a lot of the recent aerobatic airplanes I've done. It increases the rudder effectiveness. Basically acts like it's a bigger rudder than it is, and it also increases the stability. It kind of adds damping aerodynamically, so the rudder doesn't float so much. The airplane stays more on track and yaw.
Okay.
It's all those little things. Does it make a huge difference? Like you mentioned, the conversation was good. No, it's not a huge difference, but it's a difference in the positive.
Sure.
Just all these little things that make an airplane fly better and better and better.
Well, it reminds me of conversations I've had with guys in, honestly, about everything from studio recording microphones to high-performance race car engines. The difference between, your entry-level stuff and the high-end stuff may be very difficult for a lot of people to perceive, but when you perceive it, it's priceless.
Yes,
and that's
exactly.
where very expensive microphones can cost a lot of money, and obviously race cars aren't in everybody's driveway. So those little differences are what kind of take a machine to the next level.
Yeah, it's in the details, and that's why. When modelers, I hear them talk about, is an extra 300 a good flying airplane, or is a Sukhoi 29 a good flying airplane? Well, it depends which one you get.
Right.
This one, it's all the little differences that add up that make this one very different from brand X. With any of them, you can't compare, a subject matter. You can't look at a subject matter and say, yeah, it's good or it's not. It's how it was designed and how it was done from the ground up, because there could be 100 little details in this one that aren't in that one that make this one a completely different animal than the other.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we've done with this. I think the first one, people loved it. They just wanted to be able to adjust it and set it the way they wanted. So we've answered we get it when we agree, and we've kind of answered that request with Gen 2.
Perfect. All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to walk us through this. There are obviously going to be some things the guys want to know: motor size, information about wingspan and weight and stuff like that.
Yep.
All of those specifications are on the products page on E-flite's website. So I encourage you to visit our website to learn more about that if you'd like. There's also a video of Mike ringing it through its paces, which is on our website as well. So I'd encourage you to check that out so you can see it in action. And again, Mike, thanks for taking the time to walk us through this.
My pleasure.